holding on. Today we're doing Daf Yud Dalet Amud Bet.
Daf Yud Dalet Amud.
Yeah. So we're really on the last line of Daf Yud Dalet Amud Aleph. We're picking up in the middle of a discussion. The Gemara's discussion for the next couple of Dapim is the dynamic between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. And even though Beit Shammai argued with Beit Hillel, the question is, did they actually follow their psak? Or did they do what Beit Hillel was? And the Gemara brought two different understandings. This could be a question before the Bat Kol, the famous Bat Kol, came out and said halacha is like Beit Hillel. Or it could be after the Bat Kol. But there's a machlok. And machlok Rav against Shmuel, Rish Lakish against Rabbi Yochanan. Did Beit Shammai do like their own psak? So
that's one time Bat Kol came, no?
Yeah. So the Gemara wanted to bring a proof from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said that there's really a machloka Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel about a tzarat erva, the co-wife of an erva. According to Beit Shammai, she requires yibum. According to Beit Hillel, she's pitura from yibum, and if she does yibum, there's an isur of arayot, of eshet ach. So the Gemara said that even though they had the piskei halacha, even though they paskin differently, but they didn't refrain from intermarrying each other. So the Gemara says, you see from here that Beit Shammai did not do their own psak, because if they did their own psak, then their children are going to be mamzerim, some of them, according to Beit Hillel, and how would they be able to intermarry? So the Gemara said no. They told them. They really Beit Shammai, could be the Beit Shammai did like their own psak, and they just told Beit Hillel, these children don't have a good yichus, you can't marry these ones are mamzerim according to you. So we're by where it says on the very bottom, it says, V'hachi nami mistabra, 2 lines from the bottom. V'hachi nami mistabra. It makes sense to say such a thing. Diktani seifa kol ha'taharot v'chol ha'temeot shehayu elu mitaharin ve'elu mitamein. It says in the Sefer, the last line of our Mishnah, all of the Tuma v'Tahara, all the cases that one would be mitameh and one would be mitaher between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, nevertheless, lo nimnu osim taharot elu agabe elu. Nevertheless, they still borrowed each other's kelim. Now, the Gemara says, okay, well, who borrowed from who? I amrit bishlama de modi lehu. Mishumachi lo nimnu. If you say that they told them, listen, this kli is tameh for you, so that's why they would borrow from each other, because they trusted that they would tell them if it's a kli that they can't borrow. Eliamrit de lo modi lehu. But if you say that they didn't tell them, so then why would they borrow from each other? So we're going to read the Gemara the way that it says it. Tosfot has a little bit different girsa, because the way the Gemara says it, it comes out that Beit Shammai is more lenient than Beit Hillel. Tosfot flips the girsa, but the Gemara says, if you're going to tell me that they didn't let them know when they came to borrow kelim, they didn't let them know which kelim they're allowed to borrow, so Bishlama Beit Shammai mi Beit Hillel lo nimnu detemot de Beit Hillel le Beit Shammai tehorot ninhu. So Beit Shammai from Beit Hillel, there's no problem to borrow, because what Beit Hillel was mitameh, Beit Shammai said is tahor. Again, Tosfot flips this around. Ella Beit Hillel mi Beit Shammai lam lo nimnu. But Beit Hillel, to borrow from Beit Shammai, they shouldn't borrow. Why? Because tehorot de Beit Shammai le Beit Hillel temeot ninhu. The point is that what one of them holds is tameh, the other one is going to hold is tahor. So if the one who holds that this is tameh is borrowing from the one who holds this is tahor, and they're not telling them that this kli is tameh according to their own opinion, so then how could they borrow? They should not be allowed to borrow.
Why can't they borrow and be taiva or be mitayr?
Well, some kelim you cannot be tovel. Right. So elalav de modilahu, it must be that they told them. Shema mina. The Gemara says, you see, it must be that they told them. So the Gemara says, 1 second. You're trying to bring me a proof. Well, the whole thing was we were trying to bring a proof that Beit Shammai really didn't do like their own psak. So the Gemara says, 1 second. My ulme dehach mehach. I brought you a proof from the beginning of the Mishnah that Beit Shammai didn't do like their own psak because they intermarried with Beit Hillel. You're telling me no, they did like their own psak. They just told each other, and I'll prove it to you because with the Kelim also they must be that they told each other. What's the difference between the case of the Kelim and the case of the Tzarat Erva? They're both the same thing. So the Gemara says no. There is a little bit of an added chidush. Ma'u detema tzara kala itle. I might have thought to say that a tzara, the co-wife, there's its word gets out, and therefore Beit Shammai wouldn't need to notify Beit Hillel. Everybody hears of the cases of Yibum, and the Beit Hillel is responsible to keep track of which people from Beit Shammai are really, they did Yibum, and according to Beit Hillel, they weren't supposed to. Maybe that's something that Beit Hillel will keep track of because it's something that's more public. But Kelim, that I might think that is different, and that's why they notified. So it's coming to teach me that no, by both of them they would notify. Okay, so either way, we're coming out that Beit Shammai, you don't have a proof from the beginning of our Mishnah that Beit Shammai did not do like Beit Hillel. Again, the potential proof was, we wanted to say that Beit Shammai must have done like Beit Hillel because they were able to intermarry. To which the Gemara basically is answering that that's not necessarily true. It's possible that they told each other which people had good yichus according to the other's opinion, or which people had bad yichus according to the other's opinion. Okay, Gufa Amar Rabbi Elazar, Afa Pisha Nichluku Beit Shammai u Beit Hillel Betzarot, Modin she'en mamzer ella mimishi isuro isur erva ve'onesh karet. So we had this statement on the previous Amud. The Gemara is going to bring it again, then get a little bit into it. So Rabbi Elazar said that even though Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel had a machloket about a co-wife of an erva. So again, Reuven and Shimon are brothers. Reuven is married to Shimon's erva, Shimon's daughter-in-law, whatever the case is, one of those 15 arayot, and is also married to some other woman, and Reuven dies. So the tzarat erva, the co-wife of the erva, according to Beit Shammai, she does yibum. According to Beit Hillel, no yibum. So even though they have this machloket, yeah.
Wasn't there a machloket? Right, Kiva said that b'nei Lav.
Okay, so yeah, we're gonna get to that.
Is erva for who? For the Shimon or for the...
Reuven is married to someone who's an erva only to Shimon, and he's married to some other lady who's not an erva to anybody.
Shimon,
Yeah. So even though they have this machloket, nevertheless they agree that there's no mamzerut here because a mamzer only comes from something that is karet. So now the question is, who agrees to who? We're saying Beit Shammai agrees to Beit Hillel that there's no mamzerut here, or Beit Hillel agrees to Beit Shammai. So let's go through the steps. The Gemara says, Man modim, who agrees to? Ilema Beit Shammai le Beit Hillel.
If there's no karis, is that the point?
So let's get to it. The Gemara is going to be user friendly here and speak it out. So who agrees to? Ilema Beit Shammai le Beit Hillel. If you're going to tell me Beit Shammai agrees to Beit Hillel, so what's the worst case scenario according to Beit Shammai? Somebody who requires yibum, that tzarat erva, according to Beit Shammai, requires yibum, and according to Beit Hillel doesn't. So worst case scenario is somebody who requires yibum or chalitza gets married without having chalitza. So that, of course, pshita, that's pashut. Bnei chayvei lavin kisherim ninhu. Of course, there's no mamzerut. There's no they're chayvei lavin. It's not. There's no karet over there for a woman who requires chalitza to marry out. Ella Beit Hillel le Beit Shammai. So what do you want to tell me? Beit Hillel agreed to Beit Shammai, meaning there's no. Sorry, I just have to finish this before the fast starts. There's no what's it called? There's no sorry. Beit Hillel agrees to Beit Shammai. Sorry, that there is no. Pshita b'nei chayvei lavin ksherim ninhu ela Beit Hillel le Beit Shammai. So wait, Beit Hillel agrees to Beit Shammai that. Sorry, let me go back. Right, that there's no case of mamzerut here. You're going to tell me Beit Hillel agrees to Beit Shammai that there's no case of mamzerut here? What are you talking about? He gufa chayvei kritud ninu. chayve krituti. According to Beit Hillel, this is a case of kritut, because you have a woman who is not allowed to do yibum. That means she's eshet ach shelo bimkom mitzvah. It's the brother's wife in a situation where she's not allowed to do yibum, and you did yibum. That she's an isur karet. The kid is a mamzer. So how could you tell me Beit Hillel agrees to Beit Shammai? So the Gemara says, really, leolam Beit Shammai le Beit Hillel. Okay, so really, Beit Shammai agrees to Beit Hillel. So we said that's obvious. There's no chayve kritut. So it's coming to show that they're not following Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva holds that there's a mamzer from chayve lavin. That if there's just an isur lav, there is a mamzer. We don't paskin that way. Kamash malan de'in mamzer mechayve lavin. It comes to teach us that no, they agree, Beit Shammai agrees to Beit Hillel that there's no mamzer in this scenario, because they hold that there's no mamzer unless it's a chayav karet relationship. But if it's just a lav relationship, then there is no mamzerut. Okay. Okay, we're done. Tashema. So now the Gemara is again going back to try to bring a proof. Did Beit Shammai do like their own psak against Beit Hillel, or did they not? So Tashma. Afal pi shenichleku Beit Shammai u Beit Hillel, even though Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel argued about the following cases. Now the Gemara is going to bring a bunch of different cases where they argued about that is nogea to kiddushin, it's nogea to the sanctity of a marriage. Some of them are nogea to mamzerut. So they argued about tsarot. That's what we right. Beit Shammai, he said that the tsarot do yibum. Beit Hillel said that tsarot, the co-wives of an erva, do not do yibum. Uv achayot, the case of sisters. That case is Rashi brings machlok exactly what the case is, but let's just go with the simple understanding. Two brothers married two sisters, and then both of those brothers died. Those two sisters at the same time fall to yibum to a third brother. That's also a machlok at Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. Whether they require chalitza, we'll get to it. That's a third pair. Beget yashan, they also argue about get yashan. What's the case of get yashan? So get yashan is somebody writes a get to his wife. Before he gives it to her, he's meyached with her and he's together with her. So there's a halacha that a person cannot use such a get. Why? Because we're worried about some gezerah. But the point is that there's a halacha that somebody cannot use such a get. That's a machloket Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. If somebody divorced with such a get, he wrote the get and then he slept with his wife and then he gave it to her. Uv safek eshet ish. Also, they have a machloket about safek eshet ish. So what's safek eshet ish? Rashi brings two pshatim. One pshat.
Okay.
No more food. Yeah. Rashi brings two pshatim. One pshat is a girl who could do miyun, so she's under bat mitzvah, she's 10 years old,
yeah,
and she's married, but her kiddushin, she could do miyun, she could walk out. So she's a safek eshet ish, meaning she could end up walking out and never have been married to begin with, or it could be that she won't. So at this point right now, she's a safek eshet ish. So machloket Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, what the halacha is about a safek eshet ish. Uv magareshet ishto v'lana ima bepundak. So this is famous machloket Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. Let's say somebody fully divorced his wife, gave her a get, 100% divorced, with edim and everything, and then he spends a night with her in the hotel. So do we say that, listen, they were together in a hotel, there was probably a bia done, and maybe that bia was, he had intentions of kiddushin, so maybe she needs a second get. She needs another get now. Maybe they're back together, and she needs another get. Machloket Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. Bekesef shaveh kesef, v'ruta shaveh pruta. Also, another machloket Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel is what's the minimum amount for kiddushin? Someone goes and he's mekadesh a lady with a pruta, or something worth one pruta. According to Beit Hillel, that's a good kiddushin. According to Beit Shammai, that's not enough money. So you have all these cases where, according to Beit Shammai, she's going to be married, or she's going to require a get, or I'm sorry, according to Beit Hillel, she's going to be married, or she's going to require a get, or she's going to be an erva, and according to Beit Hillel, she's not. So even though you had all these cases of machloket, lo nimneu Beit Shammai milisa nashim mi Beit Hillel. Right? Same like our Mishnah, that Beit Shammai did not refrain from marrying women from Beit Hillel, v'lo Beit Hillel mi Beit Shammai, and Beit Hillel did not refrain from marrying women of Beit Shammai. Lelamedecha shechiba vereut nohagim ze bezeh. To teach me that they were noheg chiba, love and friendship with each other, even though they disagreed with each other. Lekayem ma shene'emar, in order to fulfill the pasuk that says ha'emet v'hashalom ehavu. Right, it's funny, that pasuk is by the fast. So it's a Tzom HaRevi, Tzom HaChamishi, Tzom HaAsiri, etc. Okay, Rabbi Shimon says this is a continuation of this Braita here. So the Tanakama said that, right now we're assuming there's a machloket. Tanakama said even though they had all these machlokets, they still intermarried with each other. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Nimnu en mina vadai. Rabbi Shimon said, no. If there was a vadai issue, there was someone who was 100% asur for them, even though it was mutar according to the other one, they would refrain, they wouldn't marry her. V'lo nimnu mina safek. But if it was someone who was a safek, then they wouldn't refrain. So that's the Braita. So now the Gemara picks up on Rabbi Shimon's opinion and says like this: if you say that Beit Shammai did like their own psak, so mishumachi nimnu, that now Rabbi Shimon makes sense. That Rabbi Shimon is saying they refrained from anyone who was vadai asur for them, even if it was mutar according to the other opinion, but they refrained. Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel would not marry someone who was a vadai tzarat erva in their world, who would be asura to do yibum. They would refrain from marrying the children of that relationship. So that only makes sense if you say Beit Shammai actually did like their own psak. Ela yamrat lo asu, but if you say Beit Shammai did not do like their own psak, so amay nimnu, why would Beit Hillel refrain from marrying ladies of Beit Shammai? It must be from the fact that they, according to Rabbi Shimon, they refrained from a vadai woman who was asur according to their opinion. It must be that Beit Shammai didn't follow the opinion of Beit Hillel. Because if Beit Shammai followed the opinion of Beit Hillel, then there's nothing to refrain from. Clear?
Yeah.
So the Gemara says, okay, good. V'tisbera, Nihinami de'asu. The Gemara says, does that really make sense? Nihinami de'asu. Even if Beit Hillel did, I still have a question here. Bishlama, I'm sorry, even if Beit Shammai did like their own psak, Bishlama Beit Hillel nimnu mi Beit Shammai techaygrei kritut ninhu umamzerim him. We said in the Braita, we said Beit Hillel didn't refrain from Beit Shammai, and Beit Shammai didn't refrain from Beit Hillel. And according to Rabbi Shimon, they did by cases of vadai. So the Gemara is just pointing out here that let's play it out. Beit Shammai refraining from, Beit Hillel refraining from the ladies of Beit Shammai, or the children of Beit Shammai. That makes sense because according to Beit Hillel, the children are mamzerim because you have a tzarat erva, co-wife of an erva, which according to Beit Hillel is not allowed to do yibum, and if she does yibum, it's going to be an isur karet. So that makes sense that they would refrain. Right, so Bishlama Beit Hillel nimnu mi Beit Shammai, makes sense that Beit Hillel would refrain from the children of Beit Shammai that are vadai asurim according to them. Dechayve kritut ninu, because the relationship of the tzarat erva to the yavam would be a chiyuv karet relationship. Umamzerim hem, and the children of that relationship would be mamzerim lebeit Hillel. Ela Beit Shammai amay nimnu bi Beit Hillel, but why would Beit Shammai have to refrain from marrying children of Beit Hillel? The children of Beit Hillel are at most chayve lavin. It's a woman who requires chalitza in the world of Beit Shammai, but Beit Hillel says no, she doesn't. She could go marry whoever she wants. So if she marries whoever she wants without chalitza, there's nothing wrong with the child. The child is not a mamzer. It's just a bnei chayve lavin. So the Gemara says Kida Amar Rav Nachman. So the question is, why is it that Beit Hillel I mean, why is it that Beit Shammai would have to refrain from marrying anybody from Beit Hillel? Worst case scenario, the children are still ksherim. So the Gemara says, Kedamar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. We're going to use an answer of Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak that he said elsewhere. We're going to apply it here. Lo nitzracha ela letzara atzma. We're talking about the tzara herself. So Hachanami, also over here, Lo nitzracha ela letzara atzma. We're talking about the tzara herself, meaning the lady herself. If a woman, according to this tzarat erva, we're not talking about her children. Her children are for sure ksherim. If she goes and marries somebody else and she has children, they're ksherim. The question is, this lady herself, according to Beit Hillel, she can go marry whoever she wants without chalitza. According to Beit Shammai, there's an isur lav on her. She cannot get married without chalitza. So when we say Beit Shammai would refrain from the vadai women that are asurim, we're talking about the woman herself, not her descendants. Her descendants are going to be ksherim for sure. But her herself, if according to Beit Shammai, she requires chalitza, so she can't just marry whoever she wants. So on her, Beit Shammai would refrain from a vadai woman that according to them requires chalitza. Now, the Gemara just asks a question to clarify things a little bit, which changes the understanding of the Braita. The Gemara says, let's just backtrack a little bit. Umay shna mina vadai de asirahu, safek nami asirahu. What's the, like? Why would they only refrain from a woman who's vadai asura? It's safek also. It's a safek deoraita. She's a safek eshet ish. This is a safek mamzer. You know, you also can't get involved in a relationship. Either way, it's a safek deoraita. Safek deoraita. You can't get involved in such a relationship. So the Gemara says, Lo tema min hasafek ela ema min hastam. Don't say min hasafek, rather say min hastam. Meaning, Rabbi Shimon is saying that Beit Shammai would not refrain from Beit Hillel min hastam. Meaning, if there was an issue, they would tell them. If nothing was said, that means she's kasher. Both ways, right? When Beit Shammai goes to marry a woman from Beit Hillel, or vice versa, so they'll ask. They won't even need to ask. They'll just min hastam. They'll marry whichever woman, because if there's nothing said, there's no safek, right? Meaning, the min hastam, the lady would be okay. Why demodi lehu parshi? Because anytime there was an issue, Beit Shammai would tell Beit Hillel, and they would refrain. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, umay kamash malan, what's it coming to teach? That they would be with each other, even though they had completely different opinions. And Beit Shammai held this child is a mamzer, and Beit Hillel said, or other way around. Beit Hillel held this child is a mamzer, and Beit Shammai held that this child is completely kasher. But ahava v'reud noagim zeh b'zeh. They would still intermarry. They would notify each other. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, hainu resha. Rabbi Shimon is saying the same thing as Tanakama. So the Gemara says, "Hakamash man dekula Rabbi Shimon." He's coming to teach the whole thing is going according to Rabbi Shimon. So what's coming out in this Braita is really the whole thing is Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon is telling us that Beit Shammai, even though Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel argued about all of these cases that could potentially, many of them could potentially lead to mamzerut, cases where a lady needs a get, she's considered an eshet ish according to one, according to the other one, she's not. In all these cases, Beit Shammai still would have no problem marrying ladies from Beit Hillel. Beit Hillel would have no problem marrying ladies from Beit Shammai. And Rabbi Shimon explains that any time that there is a safek, they would have told them. Min hastam, a lady would be kasher, because the other Beit Shammai would go out of their way to tell Beit Hillel, like, by the way, you know, this family, and this family, don't touch. Everyone else is fine. So okay, we'll stop here. There is just one very interesting machloket achronim on this Gemara. The question is, you kind of see from this Gemara, there's a Pri Chadash that brings a raya from this Gemara, that if one Rav holds one way and another Rav holds another way, so is it asur for the Rav to give, like, let's say I hold this as kasher and another Rav holds as treif. So can I invite him to my house and feed it to him? I hold it's kasher for him too. He holds it strafe. I don't agree. Am I allowed to feed it to him or no? So it sounds like from the Gemara, this was like, some ahava and reut. There was no issue, midina, for Beit Shammai to let Beit Hillel marry the ladies that are mamzerim according to them. The Gemara says ahava and reut. It sounds like an additional out-of-the-way thing that they did. So the Pri Chadash brings a proof. He says there's no issue of lifnei iver lo titen michshol if I hold this mutar. I hold this mutar for me. I hold this mutar for you also. But what's it called? So I could give it to you. That's the Pri Chadash holds. Others argue and they say no. There's a difference between me feeding you something, being sefia beyadayim, me actually feeding you something that you hold as asur. That I can't do. Even though I hold as mutar, I can't actually give you and feed you something that you hold as asur. But what I can do, mi'ikar adin, is to just let you take it. I'm not obligated to stop you from taking something that I hold as mutar. So that's where Beit Shammai went out of their way. Beit Hillel would come to marry a woman. Beit Shammai didn't have a responsibility, midina, to tell them, stop. This is going to be according to you. She's not a good family. She's a mamzer according to you. Even though Beit Shammai, according to them, they held that she's muteret. But they went, even though there was no halacha that they had to stop them, but they went out of their way to make sure that Beit Hillel was doing what's kosher according to themselves.
Is that what we hold nowadays too?
I believe most go like the Shach brings us down.
That you stop them?
That you don't have to stop them, but it's like a minhag ahava v'reut that it's appropriate to do, but you're not obligated midina to stop them from doing something.
Stop them if you can.
Yeah, that everybody would agree is good to, but no chiyuv. Yeah.
So we don't have a raya.